Thanks, Diane, for being here.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And just want to, point out that we're talking about the discriminating eater, or picky eaters, if you want to call them that too. Yeah, my name's Diane Peck, and I work for the state of Alaska in physical activity and nutrition, and I am the early care and education coordinator, working with childcare providers on how to do nutrition and physical activity, and working to help kids grow up at a healthy weight, and that sort of thing. So, I'm going to be probably just going through some slides that I have for you, and then if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. And we can answer those during this, but we can also wait to the end and answer any real specific questions that you might have. So, as I mentioned, we're talking about the discriminating eater. Picky eating is probably one of the main topics that dietitians talk about with kids. And even though it actually is developmentally normal for children to be picky eaters, it still doesn't make it any less distressing for parents and caregivers. Let's see here. Nice. So, children who have regular meals, we know they do better in all ways. They do better emotionally, socially, academically, nutritionally. They tend to be at a normal weight, and they tend to avoid things like drugs and alcohol and early sexual behavior. So family meals are really instrumental in positive outcomes in children. They find even more so than almost anything else, like sports and tutors and church and music and things like that. The list goes on. So we want to help our kids grow up to be healthy, grow up at a healthy weight, be ready to learn. We're also trying to help our kids develop adventurous eating habits. So they're kids who are willing to try new foods. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to enjoy family meals, the division of responsibility, which everyone has a role to play during mealtime, and then some mealtime tips too. All right, so let's start out with this scenario. Have you ever heard this before? Hello, my name is Lexi, and I will gag at the sight of sauce, except if you call it frosting. And I really love pasta frosting. And Margaret here, she thinks that cheese and tortillas are delicious, but if you melt them together and call it a quesadilla, I won't touch it. Hello, my name is Olivia, and I won't touch anything on my plate, but I will eat anything I find on the floor. I wonder if any of those scenarios sound familiar, or you probably have your own. I've heard a lot about vegetables. Always hear about the vegetables. But we call them trees or instead of broccoli, and somehow that seems to make it more palatable. But we've got all kinds of things. I know that you have tips, and I really want to hear those later too, what your tips are. All right, so what is picky eating? We should define this first. Refusing food, eating the same food over and over, food jags, which means sometimes they eat a lot and sometimes they don't eat anything, or they won't eat combined foods. Those are all some examples of picky eating, and those actually are all considered normal eating. So these are normal patterns for kids, and they often have a physical reason behind this. Some of these things, like kids' palates are sometimes more sensitive to some of the natural chemicals that are found in food, and so when they say something tastes yucky, it might really taste yucky to them. I know even adults, my sister-in-law, she cannot eat cucumbers, and I love them, and I love cilantro, but other people say it tastes like soap. So there's a chemical in there that they're tasting that I'm not. And so, you know, we've all got that. Kids are much more sensitive to those, and so they're going to taste those kind of things. Young kids, they grow in spurts. So it's not just this trajectory. They're just constantly going to grow and then they plateau. Then they grow, then they plateau. And so their appetites are going to kind of follow that. When they're growing, they're going to probably eat anything that's not nailed down. But when they're in that plateau, they might not feel like eating anything at all. So that is normal and that's physiological. Let's see, and you've probably heard that we eat with our eyes. Combining foods sometimes just looks like it's all mushed together and might not look appetizing to a child, whereas they might eat the individual items. When you chop them all up and stir them together and bake them, it just doesn't look the same to them, and they could be fearful of it too. And so we're going to talk about trying new foods in just a bit, but you know, there could be reasons why they're refusing to eat that. All right, how about some tips for a happy, stress-free meal? As I mentioned earlier, mealtime should be family time. It's really important, as I mentioned, all those reasons why. It doesn't have to be every meal that the family comes together, and it doesn't have to be every day that the family comes together, but at least several meals a week. It's really important for the family to come together and to share a meal. It's a great opportunity for adults to model behaviors to kids, especially, you know, eating those healthy foods. And just a good time to enjoy each other's company. We want to keep mealtimes positive. It's not really the time to be handing out punishment at mealtime. When you associate food with positive feelings, you're much more likely to grow up with a healthy relationship with food. But if you're always associating it with, oh, I'm getting punished as I'm eating my broccoli, you know, you may not like broccoli. So we want to make sure that meal times are positive. Share your day. Talk about, you know, whatever's positive that's going on. When you're in a childcare setting, you know, you can talk about the food and, you know, textures and colors and numbers and all those kind of things that are positive around the food, and not scolding children, you know, for spilling their milk or spilling their peas or something. We don't want to make a big deal about what children are not eating or what they are eating. I'll talk about this in a minute. This is the division of responsibility, but it can become a fun game very quickly when kids learn that they can get your goat or get you riled up over food. And so that tends to be one of those early control issues. And we get food fights between parents and children because they know that they can kind of manipulate you around that. They get very smart about that very quickly. So it's important just to not make a big deal about if they're eating their peas or their broccoli or whatever. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a minute. It's also important to teach kids good table manners. This is the time to be doing that. Table manners really are important. We're kind of losing some of that as we do more and more fast food, eating in the car, eating with our phones in our face, you know, that type of thing. And table manners are still important. And so it's really important to make sure that we model those and we teach those to kids. And then, of course, the screens. Screens can be very distracting at mealtime. You are not engaging with the people around you. And those human face-to-face interactions are becoming more and more important. We're really finding the research showing that screens are not necessarily making people depressed, but contributing to that with all the social media and all the news and whatever people are watching, it does contribute to some of the depression that we're seeing. And so that face-to-face human interaction is extremely important. So screens take away from that. Screens are also distracting from what you're eating. Lots of people just keep going when they're watching TV or on a screen, playing video games, just mindlessly putting food in their mouth. And so we really want to try and disassociate screens with food and eating. All right, so the division of responsibility. I'm wondering if anybody has ever heard of this before. Anybody throw in the chat, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down? Well, the division of responsibility is really the gold standard in feeding kids. So there are many different styles of feeding. And the division of responsibility is what's also called authoritative, which is kind of love with limits. And then there's also like authoritarian, which is more controlling, or permissive, which is more indulgent. So the division of responsibility is really the one that we're looking for, that can help kids to develop healthy relationships with food as they grow up, and also to kind of help prevent that struggle that often happens between parents and kids. So we want to avoid those food fights and that unpleasant parent-child struggle. And so with the division of responsibility, everybody has a role in eating. They have their own jobs to do. And when you cross over and start doing somebody else's job, that's when you get those uncomfortable struggles. So the parent's responsibility is for the what, the when, and the where of feeding. It's the child's responsibility for the how much and the whether or not to eat. And Ellen Satter is the one who has done just a tremendous amount of work in this area. And it's recognized by the American Academy of Pediatrics as I mentioned, the gold standard. And you can find a whole lot of information on feeding with love and good sense and the division of responsibility on her website here, which we can either put up in the chat or send out, but it's just a really good wealth of information about this topic. So let's delve more deeply into this. What is the what of the division of responsibility? So kids from toddlers on up should be eating most of the food that the rest of the family is eating. If you're serving healthy foods, then you really shouldn't have to worry if they're not eating everything that's out there. Maybe they don't like one particular food, or they're not feeling really into the pasta that night. But if they're eating the other healthy foods that are on the table, you shouldn't have to worry about, are they going to be okay with that, their nutrients and things like that. So we want to make sure that they're eating from, the same foods that everybody else is eating from. We don't want anyone to have to be a short order cook or cooking just for one person because they're very picky. That's just not fair to the person who's doing the preparation. Now, I will say that, especially with kids, there may be some kind of specific things, like they don't like sauce or they don't like spice. I am not a spicy hot person. So even my friends today will take out a portion for me, and then they'll put in all the spices that they like. Or I just remember growing up and my brother didn't like tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce on the noodles. And so my mother would take some out for him and put a little butter, Parmesan cheese or something like that. So that way it's not a huge deal to make, to it's not an effort to really do that. And yes, those are some very specific things that people don't like, and that's all right. People don't like things. So also, you want to be sure and offer a variety of healthy foods throughout the week. And so they don't eat their carrots one night. Well, if you're serving something like cantaloupe, then, you know, next day, or sweet potatoes, those other dark orange fruits or vegetables, they're going to get their vitamin A that they need. So if you're mixing it up and trying to get a good variety, most likely if they miss one thing, they're going to pick it up somewhere down the road. We don't have to get all our nutrients every single day. You know, our bodies are pretty good about holding on to some things, and we can skip a day or so without even vitamin C, which is water soluble. So serving a variety of foods throughout the week, and including like fruit with the meal, not really as dessert, because that kind of sets it up as something special, but it's just, you know, something that's healthy, that's part of the meal. And then you want to try to limit those other kinds of desserts, those high fat, high sugar desserts, because we often set ourselves up for, or our kids up for, you know, having to get through the vegetables so that they can get to the prize of, you know, ice cream or something like that. And that again sets up some attitudes and some behaviors around healthy foods that aren't necessarily good and could hurt them later on in their life. So the what part is just providing healthy foods and a variety of healthy foods. Now let's look at the when. So routines are extremely important for kids, and having a fairly set schedule. I know it's really hard to have a set schedule nowadays, but a fairly set schedule on mealtime and snack times, so that kids know, you know, I'm not hungry right now. I don't really want to force myself to eat. They have that innate ability when they're younger. But they know that if I miss out this meal, I can get a healthy snack later on, and that's key too. We want to be sure that we're providing healthy snacks. So young kids, especially, their stomachs are so small that they really can't eat enough at a meal that's going to get all the nutrients that they need. So they need healthy snacks to help to keep getting those nutrients that they need. You know, and it could be, if they didn't eat their dinner or their breakfast, then maybe their mid-morning snack is going to be that leftover. Maybe they'll be hungry for that then. Or, you know, maybe it's something else, but it's a healthy option. What we don't want is kids skipping meals because they know that anytime they want, they can walk into the pantry and grab cookies or candy or a soda or something like that. So they don't need to eat the meal. They're gonna get the reward later, or anytime that they want. So we want to avoid that grazing habit too, which is why those set meals and set snacks are really important, because that grazing all day has been shown to contribute to overweight and obesity. I mentioned that. Yeah. If they don't eat at mealtime, then they can get healthy food at the next snack time. They won't starve if they miss a meal or two, and generally they'll get hungry enough that they're going to start eating. So sometimes if you're not used to doing something like this and switching the family to do this, they might rebel and not eat for a little while, but it's not generally not going to be for long. They will start eating. And the where. So it is actually kind of important where you eat. Remember I mentioned we don't want them grazing, which tends to be standing in front of the pantry or in front of the refrigerator and just eating, or walking around and eating, which is actually very unsafe for young kids. We want them to be sitting somewhere. It doesn't have to be a table. It could be, you know, a small kids table, maybe their play table. It could even be a blanket on the floor. But just that is where, or one of the places where they're allowed to sit and eat. So we want to make sure that that they've got that spot. All right. So now for the kids' role, one of their jobs is to determine how much to eat. As I mentioned, kids often have that, or actually they are born with that innate ability to stop eating when they're full. But we tend to pummel that out of them by doing things like, you know, you better clean your plate before you can leave the table and go have, you know, play. Or if you don't eat all that, all your broccoli, you're not going to get dessert. And so we start forcing them to eat when they're not hungry, and we lose that ability to know when we're full. If, you know, to this day, it's very hard for me to see you know, a full plate and not want to clean it up myself. So we want to make sure that kids, that's their job to determine if they're hungry or not. You need to trust their ability, and sometimes that is really hard to trust somebody who's so small and so little that they know what they're doing. And yes, sometimes there's that playing at the table and not focusing, and then, you know, dinner's over or the meal's over. Well, they're just going to have to learn that mealtime is when we eat. And so the next opportunity is going to be at snack time. They'll learn. It's going to take a little while, but they'll learn that they need to stop whatever they're, you know, playing around. That's okay to talk. We want them to talk and enjoy the meal. But if it's so distracting they're not eating, then that becomes an issue, and we have to kind of train them. Okay, it's going to be the next meal. And don't make a big deal about how much they're eating or how much they're not eating. Again, that just sets it up for them to be in control. And you know, whenever, sometimes with kids or even adults, when somebody tells you not to do something, that's exactly what you want to do. And so we want to, you know, oh, so you're not eating that today. It's okay. You know, you don't have to tell them, but, you know, we're going to have, you know, sweet potatoes tomorrow, so you'll get your vitamin A that way. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is if you make it a big deal. All right, and one of their jobs is whether or not to eat. So again, your child, this is your child's job or your kid's jobs. We need to remember that. Don't make a big deal. I can't stress that enough. Don't make a big deal about what they're eating or what they're not eating. Don't force or bribe kids to eat either. Again, that if you eat your broccoli, we're going to reward you with whatever the sweet dessert is, candy, cookie, cakes, pie, whatever. Or, you know, if you eat all that, you can watch TV, you can go outside and play, whatever. We don't want to do that because, again, it sets up food to become something that you just have to get through so you can get to do something else. And we want kids to learn how to enjoy healthy foods. Oh, and I did want to say, oops, oh well. When you saw that face, I don't know if I can get back there or not. Yeah, when you see this face, should you say something about that? Yeah, so remember, we're trying to also train table manners, and that's not an appropriate table manner. You know, and it's okay if they don't like it, but you know, they may be in a situation where they're at a friend's house and somebody serves something that they don't like and they give this face. That's not going to be a very nice thing. That could be very rude. So we want to make sure that we're also saying, you know, it's okay if you don't want to eat it, but let's not give me that face. All right. Good. Okay. Mealtime tips. Again, I think you guys are probably experts in some of these mealtime tips. So I don't know if we want to open it up now, or maybe after the recording we can talk more about it. But again, you know, you've probably got a wealth of information here that I'd love to learn myself. But remember that, you know, if the child care providers are experts and parents even are experts, I'd like to, you know, hear from you about what you do with your picky eaters. But a couple of things you can do to help with your picky eaters is get them involved. If they have had a say in something, like, you know, if you're at the grocery store, they can choose maybe something you haven't tried before, and you can all try it together. Or, you know, ask them, do you want zucchini today, or, you know, this week, or broccoli, or green beans, you know, and let them choose what the vegetable might be, or whatever it might be. You know, little ones even can like wash lettuce, tear lettuce. Older kids can help to chop some things up, or pour milk, or set the table, things like that. You know, if they're involved with it, they're much more likely to appreciate it and to eat it and try it too. So also another tip is cooking meals quickly and eating them slowly. Healthy meals don't even have to be fancy. You know, we have a fast food culture, and we really need to kind of slow down sometimes and learn to enjoy our food and enjoy company. Rushing through the meals, you know, doesn't really allow children that opportunity to learn from the people around them, or to learn, you know, about enjoying healthy foods, or table manners, or things like that. So it's every now and then, maybe a couple times a week if we can, you know, slowing down and having a meal together just is so good for teaching our kids. And, you know, there's really nothing wrong with no-cook meals. Cereal, fruit, and milk for dinner. There is nothing wrong with that. A fruit smoothie and some whole wheat crackers, there is nothing wrong with that for dinner. You know, it does not have to be something that's super fancy or super hard to make. Leftover meat from the night before, and make it into a sandwich the next day. Sandwich for dinner, that's just fine. Cheese and crackers and raw vegetables. In Alaska, I love smoked salmon, because I just rip open that package and have it with some crackers and raw vegetables. We're good to go. That's one of my favorites. Use planned overs instead of leftovers. You plan to have those leftovers. So like I said, you know, if you're cooking meat, try and cook a larger piece of meat and then use it the next day or next several days for sandwiches, or put it in soup or something like that. You know, roast chicken one day, that actually is really cheap and really easy. Or even getting that roast chicken from Costco, something like that, and then using that leftover chicken for chicken salad the next day. So just lots of things that you can do to stretch that meal, but more importantly, save time, and be able to, instead of cooking, eating and enjoying your family. And again, make mealtime fun and social. Talk about fun things. Turn off the TV, save the serious talks for later. You know, and take a tip from your child care provider or your school. Cycle menus really work. So the same thing every Monday. We're gonna have Meatless Monday. It's beans. Like last night, I just had mashed up some black beans, put them on some tortilla chips, and, you know, some salsa, and it was, well, a little cheese. That was my dinner last night. So That was my meatless, what was Wednesday, but meatless Monday, a taco Tuesday, soup night, pasta night, breakfast night, you know, even having it the same night every week helps kids to get that that routine, and they really like that, and they thrive with routines. And so it, you know, it helps with the meal planning. It helps with kids, you know, knowing what's coming. Hey, isn't tonight supposed to be pasta night? You know, they just, you know, it's just so helpful to know what's coming. Even a popcorn and fruit smoothie night, you know, that's making a fun night too is just fine. All right, the introducing new foods. This one I get an awful lot of people saying they just won't eat the, you know, vegetables that, well, yeah, it's going to take a while. Introducing new foods to kids will take a while. It actually takes about 15 to 20 times for a child to see a new food before they may even touch it. So that's why making a big deal doesn't help, because that might spread that number out even farther. So just serving something new, maybe talking about it. Hey, have you ever tried this before? Maybe they've tried it at childcare, who knows? Or, you know, at a friend's house or something like that. So, you know, maybe talking about it, but not making a big deal of to say, oh, I hate it, or make a big deal. We don't want to do that. But just know that introducing new foods, especially with the younger kids, it's going to be messy. It's going to be time consuming. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be maybe even a little expensive because you keep, you know, bringing these things out and they don't eat it. That's why you might just bring out a little bit of those new things. But it's really necessary. We want our kids to not be afraid of trying new foods or trying new things. We want them to explore new foods because there are just so many wonderful foods out there, so many cultures that have wonderful foods. And if we limit ourselves, we're limiting experiences and we're limiting nutrients, really. So being able to have a wide variety of foods is important for good health and just good self-esteem and being a good citizen and all those kind of wonderful things too. So we really do want to work with our kids to make sure that they're able to try new foods. Let's see here. You know, if trying new foods is a struggle at meal times, they just never will do it. Maybe trying it at snack time when you can try it in different ways. You know, sometimes at childcare, they might actually try a cooked carrot, a raw carrot, carrots grated in a carrot raisin salad, or things like that. They might try it in several different ways so kids can see that. And if you have time at home, that's a great thing to do. Some people Rihanna was saying, you know, her child will only eat raw vegetables. Well, yay, that's a good thing. You'll only eat raw vegetables. You know, and cooked, that'll come. That, you know, just keep offering them. And, you know, if they don't eat it, well then, you know, snack time, raw vegetables, that kind of thing. And we want to avoid the food fight. And so there are some helpful things that you can say, some not so helpful things. You know, we've kind of already talked about those: cleaning your plate, eating that before you can have the other thing. So we want to try to make sure that we're positive about any of the behaviors that they're showing, especially anything that might be a positive behavior, or ignoring the negative behaviors, or you know, maybe just commenting on them but not dwelling on them or making them a big issue. So just a few things that you might, you know, try is, you know, you don't have to eat that. Sometimes with kids, that just kind of deflates the whole control thing. And so, oh, well, Okay. And then next time you might see they're eating it. You know, acknowledging that they know what's right for them, you know. If they're not hungry, okay, you know what's right for you. We'll try it again next time at the next snack or the next meal. You know, it's okay if you don't like broccoli. You know, sometimes you can slip in. Big kids like broccoli, but if they're the little ones, that might be a motivator. I'm glad that you touched that. I'm glad you even poked it. You looked at it. That's good. um, let's see. You don't have to eat it. You don't have to eat. Sometimes kids are all anxious because it's mealtime and they want to play. You don't have to eat, but it's mealtime. It's family time, and we want you here at the table. We want, you know, we want to talk with you, and we want to have fun with you. So letting them know that you don't have to eat if you don't want to. And you'll be surprised if they might grab something and start eating anyway. And thank you for trying. That's always a really positive. They might not like it, but they tried it. And also, I'm happy you're learning to try new things. So just some more positive things that we can say that may help to diffuse the parent-child struggle over the food. So that's all that I have. There's my contact information. You're certainly more than welcome to contact me anytime if you have a question. And I'm gonna open it up now to see if you guys do have any questions.